Mother's hands were shaking when she set down her wine glass, and I knew exactly why. She wasn't nervous. She was excited. The kind of tremor a person gets when they think a wire transfer is about to clear and they're going to be rich by dessert. I watched her over the rim of my own glass, a Niagara Riesling I'd picked up on the way over, because some part of me wanted to remember exactly what I was drinking the night I burned my family to the ground. She kept glancing at the laptop sitting between the bread basket and the salt cellar. My laptop. The one she'd asked me to bring just in case there are any documents to look at, sweetheart, since you're so good with computers. She said it like she was asking me to pass the butter. I smiled at her. I think that was the part that bothered her most. I just kept smiling. My name is Camille Roussel. I'm 31 years old. I live in a one-bedroom in Leslieville with a cat named Pickle, and I work as a senior fraud analyst for one of the big 5 banks downtown. My specialty, the thing I've been doing for 9 years now, is catching people who try to drain accounts that don't belong to them. Identity theft, elder abuse, internal employee fraud, social engineering. If someone's pretending to be someone they're not, in order to move money, my team is the team that finds them. I've testified in front of the RCMP. I've sat across the table from prosecutors at the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. I have a security clearance. I know exactly what a forged ID looks like when it crosses a banking platform. My parents did not know this. Not really. They knew I worked at a bank. They knew I made decent money. My mother once asked me at Easter if I was a teller, and when I said no, she said, "Oh well, same thing, isn't it?" and changed the subject to my younger sister. My younger sister, Brindle. Yes, that's her real name. My mother went through a phase in the late 90s where she was reading a lot of fantasy novels, and the result was Brindle Elise Roussel, the golden child, the family treasure, the small bright thing around which our entire household orbited. 3 years younger than me, and from the moment she came home from St. Michael's Hospital wrapped in a yellow blanket, she was the only one of us who mattered. I should tell you about the accident first, not because it's the worst thing they ever did, but because it's the thing that made me understand who they were. I was 19. Brindle was 16. It was a Saturday in February, and Brindle had taken Dad's Lexus without asking. She'd snuck the keys off the hook by the back door, and she'd driven it into a hydro pole on Bayview Avenue at 1:30 in the morning, a quarter bottle of Crown Royal sloshing in the cup holder. She wasn't hurt. She had the kind of luck that even a guardian angel would resent. My father called me at the dorms in Kingston. I was at Queen's then, on the Lawrence Scholarship, the only kid from our high school who'd ever gotten one. He told me to drive home. He told me to drive home now. I remember the way the salt looked on the 401 that night, the way the headlights caught the crust of it on the asphalt. When I got to the scene, the police hadn't arrived yet. Brindle had called Dad first, and Dad had called a cousin who worked at the Toronto Police Service to slow things down. My mother was already there. So was Brindle, sitting on the curb crying, her makeup running, her phone in her hand. My mother grabbed me by the upper arm. I can still feel her fingers. She pulled me close to her face and she said, "Get in the driver's seat. Hit your head on the steering wheel. Hard. We need it to look real." I said no. She slapped me. In front of the wreck of my father's car, in front of my baby sister, my mother slapped me across the face and said, "You're strong. You're tough. You can take a charge. Brindle has a future. You don't even have a real major." I was studying biochemistry. I had a 3.9 GPA. I had a research placement lined up at Sick Kids that summer. My father caught up to us. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me with a face I had never seen before, a face that said, "Do this, or you are not my daughter anymore." And so I did it. I climbed into the driver's seat of the wrecked Lexus. I let my mother grab the back of my head and slam my forehead into the rim of the steering wheel until my vision went white and blood ran down into my eye. I blew over on the breathalyzer because Brindle had handed me her water bottle, which was not water. I took the impaired charge. I lost the Loran. I lost the Sick Kids placement. I lost Queens because the scholarship was the only way I could afford it. I came home, I worked at a Tim Hortons on Danforth for 14 months, and I started over at York with student loans. My parents told everyone at church that I'd had a bit of a wild phase. Brindle posted photos from her grad trip to Cancun. I don't tell you this for sympathy. I tell you this so that you understand what it took 12 years later to walk back through their front door and sit down at their dining room table and smile at the woman who'd done that to me. Because I had a plan. 3 weeks before the dinner, my grandmother died. my father's mother, Grandmère Hélène. She was the only adult in my entire childhood who ever told me I was the smart one. She lived in a tidy brick semi in the beaches that her husband, my grandpère Marcel, had paid off in 1981. She had a portfolio she'd built herself over 50 years, mostly Canadian dividend stocks and some Bell shares she'd inherited from her father. She had GICs laddered out across 3 different credit unions. She had a TFSA she had maxed out every January 2nd for as long as the program had existed. She was quiet about money the way her generation was quiet about money. None of us, except me, knew how much she actually had. She told me, the last time I saw her at Sunnybrook before the stroke took her, that she had made me the executor and the sole beneficiary of her estate. She squeezed my hand with the one hand that still worked, and she said, in French, "Ne les laissez pas you toucher, ma belle. Pas un dollar." Don't let them touch it. Not a single dollar. The estate, when it was all tallied, the house, the portfolio, the GICs, the life insurance, the small commercial property she co-owned in Leslieville, came to $4.6 million. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell Brindle. But the thing about families like mine is that they have ways of finding out. Brindle was friends on Facebook with my cousin Teo's wife, and Teo's wife worked at the law firm that handled the will. I don't know exactly how it leaked, but it leaked. I know because 3 days after probate started, my mother called me, sweetly, the way she only ever called me when she wanted something, and invited me to dinner. A family dinner. To remember Grandmère. Just us. Sunday at 6. Wear something nice. I knew. I knew the moment she said wear something nice. My mother had not invited me to wear something nice in 12 years, so I prepared. I went into the office on a Friday night after my team had gone home, and I sat down at my workstation. I wasn't going to do anything illegal. I want that on the record. Everything I did with my own personal accounts, on my own personal laptop, in my own personal time, using publicly available tools and one very specific feature of the bank's customer-facing platform that exists for exactly the kind of situation I was about to manufacture. I built a mirror. The bank I work for has a feature for clients in vulnerable situations, elder abuse cases, mostly, where we suspect a family member is coercing access to an account. It's called a Sentinel account. It looks identical to a real account from the customer-facing side. Same balance display, same transaction history, same login flow, same transfer interface. But every action taken on it is logged in real time and routed directly to our financial crimes unit. And every transfer pulls from a holding pool the bank maintains for stings. It is, for all practical purposes, a honeypot, and it's been used to convict roughly 40 people in Ontario alone over the last 6 years. I am authorized under my role to open one for any client I have reason to believe is being targeted. I had reason to believe is being targeted. I had reason to believe I was being targeted. I opened a Sentinel account in my own name. I populated it with a balance of $4.6 million to the dollar, matching what I knew the estate to be worth. I gave it a transaction history showing the recent inflows from the probate process. I configured it so that the visible login credentials matched the ones I knew my mother had been trying to guess for years. The ones based on Brindle's birthday and our childhood dog's name. The ones I'd been pretending to use for a decade. I synced the mirror to my actual laptop, the one I would bring to dinner, and I made sure that when someone navigated to the bank's homepage on that machine, they would land on the Sentinel, not the real one. My real money was nowhere near it. My real money had, 6 weeks earlier, been moved into a notarized irrevocable trust in Grandmère Hélène's name, with a registered Canadian charity, a hospice in Scarborough where she'd volunteered for 30 years, as the sole beneficiary if anything happened to me. My parents could not touch it. Brindle could not touch it. A court order signed by the Chief Justice of Canada could not touch it. It was gone the way smoke is gone. The laptop I was bringing to dinner held nothing but the trap. I drove out to Oakville on Sunday afternoon. Their house, the 4-bedroom on a cul-de-sac that they bought in 1994, with help from Grand-Père Marcel, looked exactly like every other house on the street. A Canadian flag on the porch, a wreath on the door even though it was October, my father's truck in the driveway, and behind it a black Audi I didn't recognize, Brindle's, presumably. Her current boyfriend was apparently in real estate. My mother opened the door with her arms already out. "Camille ma chérie," she said. She kissed both of my cheeks. She smelled like Chanel No. 5 and the kind of sweetness that, in my experience, has always cost me 5 figures or more. You look thin. Have you been eating? I've been eating, Mom? Come in, come in. Your sister's here already. I stepped into the front hall and took off my boots. I had worn the dress my mother had once said made me look like a funeral director. A dark green wool sheath, knee-length, and I had paired it with my grandmother's pearls. I wanted them to see her around my neck. I wanted them to remember whose money this was supposed to be. Brindle was on the couch with a glass of red wine, scrolling on her phone. She didn't look up. Hey, Cam! Hi, Bryn! My father was in his armchair watching the Leafs lose to Boston. He grunted. That was hello. I set the laptop bag down by the dining room table. My mother's eyes flicked to it and back to my face in less than a second. She thought she was being subtle. She had never been subtle a day in her life. We sat down to dinner at 6:15. My mother had made tourtière, which was a thing she did for special occasions. There was a salad. There was a bottle of wine I had brought and a bottle of wine my father brought up from the basement. There was, I noticed, no place setting for my brother-in-law who was supposed to be there, so it was just the four of us. The original cast. For the first 10 minutes, nobody said anything that mattered. My mother asked about my cat. My father asked about the Leafs, even though he just watched them lose. Brindle said something about a trip to Whistler she was planning. The performance of normal. Then my mother set down her fork. Camille, she said, we need to talk about Grandmère's estate. I took a sip of wine. Okay, your sister is in a difficult situation. I did not look at Brindle. I looked at my mother. What kind of situation? My mother glanced at my father. My father did not look up from his plate. My mother said, she's being threatened, Camille, by some very serious people. She borrowed money for a business opportunity, a very promising business opportunity that did not work out, and the people she borrowed it from are not patient people. Hard money lenders? I said. My mother blinked. Yes. How did you? Just a guess, Mom. They are threatening her safety, Camille, her physical safety. They have been to her condo. They know where she works. They know where I live. How much does she owe? My mother said the number like it was a sacrament. 3.8 million. I let it sit for a moment. I made my eyes go wide. I let the number look like it had hit me. 3.8, I repeated. Yes. And Goma left me 4.6. Yes. And you would like me to give Brindle 3.8 of it. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. Her hand was cold. I would like you to be a sister to her. The way she's always been a sister to you. I thought I might laugh. I did not laugh. I said, and how are we doing this exactly? My mother exhaled. She looked relieved. She thought she had won. She said tonight, right now, we have a notary coming at 7:30 to witness the transfer. We have all the paperwork prepared. Your father had a friend at his firm. Draw it up. All you have to do is log into your account and authorize the transfer to your sister's account, and we keep this entire matter inside the family. No police. No publicity. No trouble for any of us. And if I don't? My mother's face changed. The sweetness peeled back. Underneath it was something I hadn't seen in 12 years, but which I recognized immediately. It was the face she'd worn on Bayview Avenue. Camille, she said, if you don't, your sister gets killed by men who put cigarettes out on people's hands, and your father and I will know that you let it happen. And we will tell every single person we know that you are the kind of woman who let her own sister die over money. You will not have a family. You will not have a life. We have already prepared a statement for the parish newsletter. We are prepared, Camille. My father finally looked up. His eyes met mine, and I saw with absolute clarity that he had known about this for weeks, maybe months. The whole thing. Grandmère's funeral, his tears at the graveside, the eulogy he'd given about a woman who disinherited him for cause in 1996. All of it had been a performance leading to this moment. I let my voice go small. I let my chin tremble. It wasn't hard. There was a real version of me, a version I'd carried inside me since I was 19, that wanted to give them the money just to make them love me for 30 seconds. That girl was still in there. I let her speak. I don't know how to do the transfer, Mom. I don't usually move that much money. That's all right, sweetheart. Your father will help you. Just open your laptop. I opened my laptop. Brindle came around the table to stand behind my left shoulder. My father came around to stand behind my right. My mother stayed across from me, watching my face like a hawk watching a vole. The screen woke up. I navigated to the bank's homepage. I logged in with the credentials they were expecting. The Sentinel account loaded. There it was, $4,600,000 in dollars. Sitting in clean black numbers in front of 3 pairs of eyes that had, between them, never earned a dollar they hadn't tried to take from someone else first. Brindle made a small sound, a little involuntary intake of breath. Like she was seeing a celebrity. Initiate transfer, my father said quietly. I clicked the transfer tab. The interface asked who I'd like to send to. My mother slid a piece of paper across the table. On it was Brindle's account information at a different bank. TD, by the looks of it, already filled out. Account number, transit number, institution number, all of it. They had brought it with them. They had walked into this dinner with the routing number ready to go. I typed it in. I entered the amount, $3,800,000 and dollars. The screen asked for confirmation. Are you sure you want to transfer $3,800,000 and dollars and to the recipient listed below? This action cannot be undone. Press enter to confirm. My mother leaned forward. Her wine glass was forgotten. Her hands were on the edge of the table again, gripping, trembling. The same tremor I'd seen at the start of the night. She said, "Press it, Camille." I looked up at her. I looked her dead in the face. I thought about Grandmère Hélène in her hospital bed, her hand squeezing mine, her voice in French. "Ne les laissez pas toucher," I said, very quietly. "Mom, you shouldn't." She blinked. "What?" "I'm telling you. Don't make me press this button." For the first time all night, something crossed her face that wasn't greed. It was confusion. It was the very first edge of fear. She didn't understand what I was saying. She didn't understand why her daughter, the daughter who had taken an impaired charge for her sister at 19, the daughter who had lost a scholarship and a career and a life, was sitting at her dining room table telling her not to take what she had come to take. But Brindle didn't have my mother's instinct. Brindle had never had to read a room in her life. Brindle reached over my shoulder with her own French manicured finger, and she pressed the enter key herself. The screen flashed. Transfer initiated. Confirmation pending. And then, in the distance, sirens. My mother looked at the window. "What is that?" "That's the RCMP, Mom." "What?" "The Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The ones who handle financial crimes. They've been parked 2 blocks away since 5:30. The transfer you just authorized went to a Sentinel account flagged by my employer's financial crimes unit. The keystrokes, the IP address, the account details, the coercion you performed at this table. All of it has been logged and live-streamed to a federal investigator named Sergeant Aimé Lalonde, who has a warrant in her hand." The color drained out of my mother's face the way water drains out of a sink. My father said, Camille, what have you done?" "Nothing you didn't do first, Dad." Brindle was still standing behind me. She hadn't moved. She said in a voice that sounded about 11 years old, But the money. The money's transferring." "The money's not real, Bryn. There's no money in that account. There never was. Grandmare's money is in a charitable trust. It has been for 6 weeks." She took a step back from me like I was something contagious. The doorbell rang. My mother looked at the door. She looked at me. She picked up the steak knife from beside her plate. I watched her do it. I want to say I was afraid, but I wasn't. I was so far past afraid by then. That fear was a country I could no longer see. She said, "If you go to that door, Mom, put it down. I will tell them you forced me. I will tell them you forced me. I will tell them this was your idea. I will tell them, Mom, there are 6 cameras in this room. I put them in this morning while you were at church, including one in the centerpiece. Put the knife down." She did not put the knife down. The doorbell rang again. My father, for the first time in my entire adult life, did something useful. He took the knife out of my mother's hand. He set it on the table. He sat down in his chair and he put his face in his hands and he started to cry. And I do not believe a single one of those tears was for me. I went to the front door. Sergeant Lalonde was a small woman with gray at her temples and the calmest eyes I have ever seen on a human being. Behind her were 4 uniformed officers and 2 plainclothes. She said, "Ms. Mies, Roussel? Yes. Are you safe? I am now. May we come in, please?" The next 40 minutes were a blur. I have done forensic reconstructions of fraud cases for almost a decade, and I could not, if you asked me, tell you the order in which my parents and my sister were arrested. I remember my mother screaming at the officer who cuffed her that she was a good Catholic woman, and this was a misunderstanding. I remember my father not saying anything at all, just nodding, the way a man nods when he's been waiting a long time for something he knew was coming. I remember Brindle weeping into the upholstery of the back of a cruiser, and I remember not feeling a single thing about it. I remember Sergeant Lawn sitting with me in the kitchen afterward with a cup of tea that one of her officers had made me, and I remember her saying, "You did everything right. You did everything exactly right." I remember saying, "I just wanted them to love me." And I remember her saying, "I know." The trial took 8 months. My father pled out 12 years for conspiracy to commit fraud over $5,000, extortion, and uttering threats. My mother went to trial because my mother could not imagine a universe in which she was found guilty of anything. The jury took 3 hours. She got 14. Brindle, who was the actual debtor who had been the bait, got 9, plus restitution she will be paying out of prison wages until she is in her 70s. The hard money lenders she borrowed from were arrested in a separate operation in Mississauga 6 weeks later. I sold Grandmare's house in the Beaches. I kept the commercial property in Leslieville because she would have wanted me to. The proceeds from the house and the portfolio went, as the trust dictated, to the hospice in Scarborough, where they have now opened a wing in her name. There's a plaque by the door. It says, Hélène Roussel, 1938 to 2025, qui aimait sa petite fille, who loved her granddaughter. I went to see her grave on a Sunday in spring. I brought tulips. I sat on the cold ground next to her stone, and I said, in the worst French of my life, that I had done what she asked, that I had not let them have a single dollar, that she had been right about me, and I was sorry it had taken me so long to believe her. The wind moved through the cedars. A streetcar bell rang somewhere down on Queen East. I went home to my cat. I'm telling you this story because people ask me, sometimes, if I regret it. If I wish I'd just paid them off. If family is family, and I should have found another way. I want to tell you something I have learned. I have learned that some people, when they look at you, are doing math. They are calculating what they can extract before you notice. They have been doing it your whole life. They were doing it when they held you as a baby. They did it at your 6th birthday party and at your high school graduation and at your grandmother's funeral. The math never stops. The smile is just a calculator. You are allowed to stop being the answer. Sometimes the silence afterward feels empty. I won't lie to you about that. There are Sundays when I look at my phone and there is no one calling, and I think about my mother's tourtière, and I miss the version of her that never actually existed. That grief is real. That grief is mine. I sit with it. But then I think about a 19-year-old girl with blood running into her eye on Bayview Avenue, and I think about who put it there. And I think about what she would say if she could see me now. In my apartment in Leslieville, with my cat and my pearls and my quiet. She would say, good, she would say, finally. She would say it was always going to end at a dinner table. You just got to choose which one. People ask me, on the rare occasions I tell this story out loud, whether I think my parents were always going to end up where they ended up, whether prison was waiting for them no matter what I did, or whether I'm the one who put them there. I've thought about it a lot. In the quiet of my apartment, with Pickle curled on my chest and the streetcar bells ringing down on Queen East. And the honest answer is that I didn't put them anywhere. They walked there themselves, one decision at a time, over 30 years, and I just stopped standing in the road. That's the part nobody tells you about families like mine. The math has been running the whole time. Every slap, every you're the strong one, every scholarship I lost so Brindle could keep her social calendar. Those weren't accidents. Those were investments my parents thought they were making in a daughter who would never, ever say no. And when you make a person small enough, for long enough, you stop being able to imagine that one day she might grow back to her actual size. They couldn't picture it. So they drove out to that dinner the way you drive to pick up a package you ordered. They were just going to collect. What I learned, sitting at that table with my grandmother's pearls around my neck, is that intelligence on its own is not enough. There are very smart people in prison. What carries you through is the quieter thing. The willingness to spend years preparing for a moment you cannot yet see. The willingness to sit at Tim Hortons at 20 years old, Taking orders, knowing your parents told the Paris you were a wild child, and to keep your head down and study anyway. To finish the second-tier degree. To get the entry-level job. To learn the systems from the inside. To wait patiently for the day they would finally show you exactly who they were in front of evidence you had collected on purpose. That is not cleverness. That is endurance dressed up as a plan. And the moral piece, because there is one, and I won't pretend there isn't, is that loving someone does not require letting them harm you. I loved my grandmother fiercely. She loved me back. Everything else I called love in that family was a transaction with the receipts hidden. Once I could tell the difference, the choice got easier. Not painless, easier. If you are sitting somewhere right now and you recognize your own family in mine, I want you to hear this clearly. The version of you that they made small is not the real you. She is still in there. She is studying. She is saving. She is watching. And one day, when they finally make their move, she will already be standing behind the door with the lights on. You don't owe anyone the inheritance of your suffering. You are allowed to break the line at yourself and to walk forward into a quieter life, even if the silence feels strange at first. Especially then,